Hey, welcome everybody. This is Andy. I'm glad to host this little show on trust for you. Hopefully, you've got your questions ready, and after Richard gives his presentation, he's going to stick around and answer some questions. Uh, I want to state up front that I just purchased a couple of trusts from Richard, but in saying that, I want to full disclosure that I didn't get a break. I didn't pay him to be here. He's doing this on his own. There's nothing underhanded, sneaky, or anything else going on here. I just after studying these trusts for a while, I decided that I wanted to definitely go with a master's trust, and that's what he has. And so I'll let him get on with his presentation, and everybody just uh, welcome Richard Howard.
Okay, thank you.
You
Thank
bet.
you, Andy. Here's kind of the thing to remember. What we're going to talk about today is not new. As a matter of fact, it's old antique technology. So it's just there's not going to be anything new. Now it may be new to you guys because you might not have heard this, but trusts in the United States have a very special place. Trusts were that was the way the people in business handled lots of different things back in the 1800s and 1700s with trusts because they originated in Great Britain, and as more people moved here from Great Britain, more trusts were established. So this is old technology. Probably some of the first trusts that were developed in the United States or put together were owned by the Rockefellers. The Standard Oil Trust of 1863 was one of the first ones that was established. And then in 1867, he established a whole series of family type trusts, which we're kind of talking about right now. All the wealthiest families, the Kennedys, up their entire family are in trusts. The Rockefellers, every one of them. That's how they've created wealth quicker, and they've held on to it. It was through trusts. So this is not anything new. This is not a tax shelter. It's not. It's not a loophole. This is just the way that trusts work in the United States. So I used to tell people that there were only a couple of reasons that they need to maybe consider trusts as a way to do business. I think there's three right now, and just of some of the events of recently. So for our trust, people generally have come to us for, in our trust, asset protection and the tax benefits that this trust offers that you can find it, you can have it done for you. It's going to cost you a whole hell of a lot more money out there to have someone try to put this thing together, even if they know how to do it. So it has certain tax benefits. We believe, based on the fact that one of the original attorneys back in the 1970s, Robert Benson, studied trust law at Harvard. He probably modeled these trusts more after the Rockefeller Trust than, say, the Kennedy's trusts or other types of trusts. So it's old technology, old business. It may be new to you, but it's not new to how business used to be conducted. Shipment, for instance, people would ship things from England on ships under trusts, and what they would do is change trustees when it got here, and that's how they were able to bypass, kind of taxation for freight coming into this country. So anyway, a trust is nothing more than a contract between a trustee and beneficiaries. It's not a product of the state. It's not necessarily a product of the United States, but our trusts are not common law trusts, but a trust is really the common law right to contract. And that's all it is. Agreement between trustees and beneficiaries. The trustee manages the assets of the trust for the beneficiaries. So if a trust is written properly, and it's very important that the correct things are in the language of the trust, in the paragraphs. So when we talk about the IRS code that we comply with, that language is pulled together in the trust. So all in the plain language of everything this trust can do has to be written in it. And it has to be written in it to generally comply or to comply with a part of the IRS code under trust and estates that's been in the IRS code since the inception. We call it 643B. So our trusts are written to comply with the IRS code, and the language has to be in there. And for those of you that, people ask us if we have some fancy name for this trust. I mean, some people will call it Master's Trust. That's okay. But our trusts are 5 words. And you got to think of it as a 5-legged stool. So we're to have any kind of asset protection, any kind of tax benefits possible, nothing can be added to a revocable trust that will ever give a revocable trust any asset protection or tax benefits. A revocable trust will basically bypass probate, and that's about all it does. So we have to start with an irrevocable trust. So we are an irrevocable, complex, non-grantor, discretionary trust with spendthrift provisions. So the spendthrift provision, think of O.J. Simpson. His attorneys, he probably has 2 of our 5 legs. It's irrevocable, and it's got spendthrift provisions because the Goldmans have been trying to collect on their $33 million judgment, and they'll never be able to get into his trust, ever. That's how he's not even the trustee of his own trust. So that's the asset protection. Your trust cannot, if you set up the trust properly, it protects your assets. And unless it's set up fraudulently, trying to hide assets for some reason, which we just don't let people do, they're immune from any turnover order. So those words have to work together. Those other words working together, and the language is in the trust, so it's all written. It's been that way. The trusts are copyrighted for a reason. So that our trusts, let me go first of all to the third reason now that I've picked up of recent news. I don't know who's going to get into the White House. I mean, I have a feeling, but I don't know. Okay. But and I don't mean to, I hope nobody's no hard feelings here, but if the Democrats get in, you can be guaranteed that capital gains are going to go to 40%. You can be guaranteed that estate tax is going to go back from either 12 or 24, 12 and 24 million, depending on if you're single or married. It's going to go back to 600,000. And something I heard today that I hope is not right, they're going to start taxing 401ks. Now, this is what the Democrats want to do. And I was driving not too long ago across to Scottsdale from Newport Beach. I was going to go over there and meet clients, and I was driving, listening to Fox News and listening what the Democrats want to do. And I started getting really uptight and anxious, and I caught myself and said, wait a minute. I don't care if capital gains goes to 40%. I don't care if the estate tax goes to 600,000. I can protect any 401ks or I have a way to do that, to protect those. I don't care what the knuckleheads do in Washington. I don't care. It won't matter. So that's another reason. That's the third reason recently that that people ought to consider a trust, because trust law cannot be changed. The IRS code is written not by the IRS, it's written by the Congress. And if you think that for 1 minute they're going to change this, they're not going to, because they're all operating under these types of, rules in the IRS.
Okay.
So they're just not going to change them.
No,
So-
I
I'm sorry. Somebody was talking? Okay. So here's the bottom line. When we talk about this, we can tell people, just like I'm going to mention this to you guys, that some types of income in these trusts, we can totally eliminate the taxation on it. And other types of income, we can either possibly eliminate or at least greatly reduce the taxation on the other type of income. So 643B and the IRS code addresses capital gains taxes, and it addresses a little further down things called extraordinary dividends, extraordinary stock dividends, whatever you want to call it, which basically encompasses all types of passive income. So specifically capital gains, other types of passive income might be stock dividends. So if you sell stock, you're going to pay capital gains taxes if you make money. Stock dividends, interest income, royalties, limited partnership income, rental income, and lease income in this trust is reportable income to the trust, but not taxable income to the trust. That's one way to say it. I'm going to say it two different ways. So it's reportable income to the trust, but not taxable income to the trust, passive income. So we'll come back in a minute to how we look at it. So I'll come back. So any type of, in the regular beneficial trust, the basic trust. Now, and you got a business trust and a beneficial. Yeah, two trusts. That's right.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So in Andy's beneficial trust, and I operate in just a regular beneficial trust. The business of the trust is the business of my trust. And so I operate in a regular beneficial trust. So as long as Andy and I are bringing in passive income into that trust, in whatever way, it's going to be reportable income to the trust, but not taxable. Now, you might hear some of our tax guys say, okay, no, that's not exactly right. It's tax deferred income, but it's tax deferred forever in 21-year increments. And it's only taxable when there's a distribution to a beneficiary. And even then the trust doesn't pay the taxes. The person who got the distribution pays the taxes. So as long as you are, in my business, the business of the trust, we sell a copyrighted book. Therefore, my type of reported income is a royalty, which, I mean, I feel like I work hard for what I make, but it's a royalty, which is passive income. So on my tax return, I report every dime of my income. I have to account for my legitimate trust expenses. And the difference I apply to the corpus of the trust. I sign an affidavit to apply the balance to the corpus of the trust. And for the last 8 years, my tax guy has filed a zero tax return on my beneficial trust. Now, can my trust be taxed? Can Andy's beneficial trust be taxed? Yes. If we started taking active business income, we took commissions, consulting fees, we wanted to sell a product or a service. If we brought that into our beneficial trust, I can't zero that out. I would pay taxes on that. But if Andy did the same thing, he's going to take his active business income into the business trust. Then we're going to convert that active business income through different ways, mechanisms, lease backs and stuff like that. We'll convert the active business income coming into the business trust to passive income, flow it down into his beneficial trust. And there's some ways we have to get it all down there. It has to be passed through by the end of the year. So fundamentally, the business trust is going to have a zero tax return, and Andy's beneficial trust will have zero taxes on passive income. And generally we can get it all the way down to zero, but sometimes depending on the size of but we can generally zero it out, but it's a whole heck of a lot better than if you had to pay, taxes on the whole thing. So in any way, we generally get it down to zero no matter what, but we just have to go through some mechanisms on a active business income to get it down to the beneficial trust as passive income. Now, here's how I want you to look at the difference between a distribution and using the money inside of the trust for the beneficiaries in a way that is not taxable, doing things on their behalf. So think of an IRA, and think about our trust as an IRA on steroids. So you put things in the IRA, money, you can sometimes in some you can put real estate, gold, silver, diamonds, whatever it is. It grows and grows and grows tax-free. And then when you take a distribution at certain ages is when you have to pay the taxes. Okay. Now in our trust, one of those other words pops up. The complex word pops up. And in a complex trust, there's no requirement to ever distribute to any beneficiary during the taxable year. But a distribution is very different from doing things on behalf of beneficiaries that's not taxable to them. So the IRA, again, the same with the trust. If you take a distribution, you're going to pay taxes. But in our trust, we have the ability to use the money in the trust in certain ways that still is not taxable to anyone, beneficiaries or trustee. I mean, the trustee can be taxed on certain things, but it's normally not enough to even worry about. And so if I had kids or grandkids that were in school, minors in school, I can pay for their education, I can pay for their clothes, I can pay for their whatever it is. If they're in college, I can pay for their tuition. The trust could rent an apartment, let them live in it. The trust can rent a car or buy a car and let them have the use of that car. That's not taxable to anybody. The income flowing into the beneficial trust, and that's what we're going to do with Andy, is get income, passive income flowing into the beneficial trust. And as he puts his assets in there, his home, his cars, whatever, motorcycle, gun collections, his Trump flag collection, whatever he's got, I don't know. Then the trust becomes responsible for the liabilities of all those assets. And that's still not taxable to the trustee or the beneficiaries. So one of the reasons the trust is written as a complex trust, because all family revocable trusts, for instance, are simple. If the trust earns money and the trust retains the money, the trust pays taxes. If they distribute those profits, the beneficiaries pay taxes. But there's no requirement to distribute to a beneficiary. So the income, passive income in the trust, and that can come from a windfall, which I understand maybe some of you guys are invested in. It can come from a windfall, and in that case, the income, as long as that the origins of that windfall are in the trust and owned by the trust, when it increases in value, I mean, nobody knows absolutely if this thing is going to be taxed or not. I understand what people are saying, but it's a gamble, especially if capital gains taxes go to 44%, because the IRS has not made a definitive ruling on the increase in the currency. So, but in this trust, no capital gains. You place the assets in there. And now you can use that money to pay the liability. You can buy property. You could buy a fleet of Maseratis, boats, trust money, but the trust pays the liabilities and the upkeep of all of those assets, and that's not taxable income to anyone. So business trust, active business income, we convert it to passive income through leasebacks. If you recall, I mentioned a lease payment is passive investment, and so if we can do some leasebacks, which we'll be able to do, and the money flows down into his beneficial trust through a lease payment, it goes down 100% tax deferred, or reportable income but not taxable income, and he will, in his beneficial trust, probably have a zero tax return, and his business trust will always have a zero return because it's a pass through. So, Andy, let me stop there. See if there's anything I need to clear up or questions. I'll just stop right there for a minute.
Yeah, I would think in this group, because right now a lot of them or some are struggling, and they're just waiting for this thing to pop. So at what point do they really need to consider getting a trust?
Well, here's the thing. There's a bit of a trap. Now, I don't stay up on this. I mean, if I have dinar, I have it. So I don't pay attention to it like some other people do. But there's going to be a trap at these banks. I think some people, they're telling you, some people, you can't exchange unless you have a trust, which I don't think that they can't do that. It's your money, it's your investment. But if they do offer what they call a skeleton trust, it's a revocable trust, and you actually are better exchanging personally than you are exchanging into a revocable trust, because what I understand, people are saying the exchange won't be taxable. Well, I agree with that. It's not going to be, because the banks are not set up to collect taxes and to pay it to the IRS on your behalf. But what I think some people are going to have a problem with, because the IRS has not ruled on it, first of all, they won't until this thing happens. But if it is taxable, you won't find out about it until, if it happened tomorrow, you wouldn't find out about it, whether it's taxable or not, till you try to do your tax return in the early part of 2022. And I think some people are going to be surprised. So the point is, you have to kind of get out in front of it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, you have to be in front of it, because the first thing I would do, Andy, with what you do, is I would go through the bill of sale and everything, or maybe use the letter of transfer and conveyance right now to get the currency in the trust. Okay. Get it listed and get it assigned into the trust. You could do it with a letter of transfer and conveyance, which you'll see when you get your trust. If you send Albert, for instance, an email and tell him you would like to have one drawn up, that you can sign, send him an email.
Okay.
But that's what you want to do is get your currency listed for right now and get it in the trust, documented.
Okay.
And what you're going to do is you're just going to list it. Nope, don't put any values. If you have 20 million Iraqi dinar and 50 million Vietnam dong, that's really what you do. And we can do it. We can do that. Just send Albert a note, an email.
Okay.
So you just have to be out in front of it a little bit. That's all.
If somebody here that doesn't own dinar, but they're in this group and they own blocks, what we call blocks. I don't know if Albert explained to you what my business does, but basically they're investing in the stock market, or they invest in my business. I invest in the stock market. When I get dividends, I divvy it up to all my investors. So at any point, they could have the account in their name, and after they become after they know that they're getting dividends, or they get the initial dividend, they could then go get a trust and just change it with us and take over the account, however they choose to do that. But we would put the account in the trust name, and then future payments would go. So I guess my question is, at what point, wealth-wise, do people want to seriously consider having a trust for their protection? I mean, what net worth do you want to have, or otherwise it really is not beneficial, other than the
No, okay, that I understand. I understand where you're coming from. I really do. However, that's not the only way you can look at it. And I'll give you a real example of something that's going on right now in just a second. But if I've got some people in this PPE stuff, okay, and they're kind of ready to go the minute that for instance, the paymaster has the money that he can distribute, they're going to come to us. The paymaster will release a little bit of money. They set up a trust. We do some things. The paymaster, for instance, can hold the money. So if you, and would have to talk about how what route you're going to take in those dividends, because you're probably going to want to use your beneficial trust. But if you've got stuff coming in and it's going to be distributed to them, is when they would set up a trust. The currency is going to blindside us, I suspect, if it happens. I just don't know. I don't stay up on it very much. That's going to be, I mean, we can do something if you know it is going to happen. And I don't think we're going to have, 7 to 9 days to exchange. I just think that's baloney. I just don't think that's going to happen.
no.
There's going to be some time. So you just, talk to Albert about it. There may be some things he feels like he can do to help you get ahead of it. Just talk to him. If you, we may have a couple of programs where we can do some things to get you ready for it. So just talk to him about that.
So Richard.
Yeah.
So if I am, as an investor, if I don't have a trust and we get our first dividends from Andy's company, can we call you then and then set up a trust? I think that's
Yes.
what a lot of
Yes.
Now
here's the thing. Andy has control of how he reports that distribution. He has control of it. So he can either he wants to report it if he has to, and I don't know, we haven't talked about it, but if he's gonna distribute the dividends, then when he's ready to distribute, you set up the trust, and then if he has to report the income, let him report the income to the trust EIN. No problem. Because a dividend, again, is passive income. So all you guys that are either in this thing, the stock market, dividends, passive income, The currency is going to be passive income, capital gains, and all of that's going to be protected in a beneficial trust.
Okay. And
So
I did see a question. Is there an annual cost to a trust?
no, the only annual cost to the trust is what you would have in any business entity, which is a tax return, but only a federal tax return. We're not required in our trust to file any kind of state tax return. Now, it's a big deal in California.
In New York.
And New York, exactly. And in Illinois and New Jersey, in all those states, but we only file a federal because we're not a product of the state. And actually, no legislative body can control a trust. The IRS, to some degree, has to give us an EIN so we can go open a bank account to do business. But also, just another side, and I don't know if anybody here has talked to our tax guys, but we have one guy down in Texas. His name is Richard also, that will tell you that in 28 years of filing these trust tax returns, spendthrift trust, he files some spendthrift trusts that pay taxes because they don't have the 5 legs of the stool. They're just irrevocable spendthrift trusts. But he keeps an average 600 clients a year, 28 years. I don't know what that adds up to, but none of those tax returns over 28, 29 years has ever been audited by the IRS. Not one.
Wow.
Yeah. Now that's just a fact. Now he just got through filing my 8th year. It was 0. He files it. He files it. His name is on it. He sends it in. I've gotten the acknowledgement it was accepted. I've never even gotten a letter in 8 years from the IRS on my trust, on the trust.
Is a spendthrift trust neither revocable? What is it? Revocable or irrevocable, or is it neither? Or I've never.
Yeah, no, it's irrevocable because you can't. Well, let's see. You might be able to add a spendthrift. You might be able to add a spendthrift provision to a revocable trust, but you just don't have assets. You don't have asset protection. You don't have, well, you would with a spendthrift provision. You just won't, you won't have any, no benefits from a tax standpoint even though it's a revocable spendthrift trust.
Got it.
So you have to have, in order to have tax benefits, it has to be because in a revocable trust, you can take it in and out. They're not going to give you any kind of benefits,
right?
Tax benefits, if you have the ability to take it in and out. They want you fully committed. And another thing not to be concerned about is an irrevocable trust, and especially this one, because the irrevocability is in the language of the trust. You can't go in and rewrite a paragraph because you think it sounds better if you write it and you can have more benefits. You can't do it so that's the only thing that's irrevocable. You just can't change the provisions. But I can add beneficiaries, delete beneficiaries, buy things, sell things, trade things. I have a lot of latitude. I can in this trust. I have access to every dime in it. You could spend like a drunken sailor if you wanted to, and you might pay taxes on some of the money you took out. But if you're patient and learn how you can use the money inside of the trust, believe me, you will live very well and you'll be very secure that no one can take it from you. And you get out from under the, that little rat running around that little moving circle or whatever it is. You get out from under the IRS, which I'm thrilled about.
Yes.
Thrilled.
Right. Now, what about foreign people setting up a trust? Do they have to do it in their own country? Can they use a U.S. trust?
Yeah. So here's how we do it. And that's a great question, actually. All right. So a foreign national that's not a citizen, doesn't have a social security, as long as they have some way to some address, or if they can establish, they don't have to even be here yet. So the foreign national, even that without having a social, not being even a citizen of the United States, can set up a trust and we can put them as the trustee of the trust and the compliance overseer. Okay. Because when we get an EIN number, they don't care about the future trustee's social security number. They care about the grantors. And this is a non-grantor trust, which means, Andy, who is your settler on your beneficial trust?
Albert.
Okay. So Albert on the not business trust is different, but on the beneficial trust, Andy cannot be the trustee of that trust and the grantor, settler. We call it the settler. So in this case, he asked Albert to do that, and that's fine, because unless Andy adopts Albert, he's not going to ever be part of his trust. So that's good. So through signatures, Albert's supposed to fund the trust with $10 and the trust operating manual, and through signatures appoints Andy as the trustee of the trust, and Andy's the settler leaves. So when we get the EIN number, they're going to want the social security number of the settler. So if Albert or I or even Andy in the future was setting up a trust, they would be the settler. We get the EIN using the social security number of the settler. The EIN would come out with a foreign national in the upper left-hand corner of the EIN. And then the only thing they have to do is come to the country, apply for and get a TIN number, a TIN number, which a lot of foreign nationals from when they come across south of the border, if they want to play it straight, they get a TIN number, and that's how they report their taxes. They take that TIN number to the bank with the documents we get them in the trust, and they can open a bank account and manage their own trust in the United States.
Okay.
So the answer is yes.
And it would depend on their country as to whether or not, I guess their country would have no say either, would they?
No, they wouldn't.
All set up in this country. Okay.
Yeah. It's set up in this country.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, I think I already know the answer to this one. Can you transfer ownership of a trust?
You can substitute trustees.
Right.
Remember, I mentioned a few minutes ago that when they used to, back in the old days, really old days, they would send freight under a trust with instructions to change trustees over here. The new trustee would come in and take the freight, and we'd bypass any kind of what do you call it when you get taxed on it? In any case, yes, you can change. A trustee can resign and a new one can step in.
And it would be the compliance overseer that would make that change, right?
That the trustee would do it, but the compliance overseer is going to tell the trustee what to do. So if it's the same person, you're just telling yourself what to do technically.
Right.
But the problem with that, if that's what you're thinking, to set it up and then substitute trustees, the only thing I can think of is that for the future, the foreign national's name won't be in the upper left-hand part of your EIN from the IRS. There might be a problem there. That's the only thing I can think of.
Okay. All right. Does it make a difference which state the trust originated from?
No. My trust is domiciled in the communist state of California and good old Orange County.
Okay. And any thoughts on a modern directed trust structure?
I don't know what, I'm not sure I know what that is. I mean, I know a little bit about some of them, but I don't know what that is.
Okay. Basically, to have the power you're talking about, they need to have those 5 elements, those 5 legs.
To have tax benefits per the IRS code, to avoid taxation on passive income, yes. Yeah, it has to be written with all 5 legs. See, you can have just an irrevocable spendthrift trust, which is technically a special needs trust for, let's just say that an older couple they had a special needs child that was getting older, and they were going to take care of that person put them in a trust but that trust doesn't have the same benefits that ours does. Ours has to have all 5 legs of the stool. And we don't even know if OJ's trust we know it has to have 2, but we don't know if it has the others. When he sold, what was it, Buckingham or whatever it was, his house in LA, we don't know if he was able to avoid the capital gains. Don't know. But we know that he has to have spendthrift provisions, because the Goldmans cannot and will never be able to get into that trust. They've been trying for 25 years.
So if you buy and sell a house and in this trust, if you buy a house this year and then sell it, say 10 years from now, and you make a little bit of money off of it, that won't be taxable?
No.
The money
No.
that was made over and above what you paid for it?
Well, no, under no circumstances. I mean, the trust is even better for a couple other things. But you have a house in the trust, real estate, or if you have stock or anything subject to capital gains, if it's held in the trust name and the money is sold and it comes back into the trust, there's no capital gains. But the trust does a couple of other things that other trusts don't do. Number one, if you know what a 1031 exchange is,
Yeah.
let's just say you had a building that had gone through 1 or 2 1031 exchanges, and you wanted to get out from under it because you wanted to retire or something. Well, if you just sold the building, you're going to get bent over and you know what. But you place it in this trust and you sell it, there's no recouping of the previous capital gains, previously deferred capital gains. All of it comes back into the trust, no capital gains. One of the reasons that I'll just give you, the Kennedy's trusts are very different in that, as an example, they're all in trusts since the early 1900s. But they give an example in this article that I read. If you Google the Kennedy's death and taxes, an article will come up, and in that article it shows that they owned the Merchandise Mart in Chicago, and they sold it as a family, and they had to do some kind of deal, stock deal. It outlines it in there, to defer part of the capital gains on the sale. And if the Merchandise Mart had been in any one of our trusts and they sold it and the money came back, no matter how much it was, it would be 100% capital gains deferred. Deferred forever, 21-year increments, because the trust can only last 21 years, but the trustee renews it at 21 years. And the only time it's taxable if it's distributed to a beneficiary, or the trustee takes a distribution, which he or she can do. And it's not taxed to the trust, it's taxed to the individual who took it. And since there's no real requirement to distribute, because you can use the money so many other ways, it's capital gains tax deferred forever, period.
Wow.
Yeah. And you can actually, another thing you can do is immediate buy sells in this trust. Because if you bought a building today and you had a buyer for that building that wanted to close on next Monday, you bought it, you put it in the trust. That's really, really short term. It's a flip. It's technically the money you make on it is ordinary income on that shorter term, but still in the trust, it's not taxable. So the trust is pretty good. It's going to protect your assets. Now, let me give. So somebody asked about what kind of wealth assets should you have? I got a call from a guy in New York. He has an idea that he wants to do from a real estate standpoint. He doesn't have any real wealth at all, but what he wants to do and how he wants to grow, he's going to do what he needs to do to get this trust, and he's going to do this real estate stuff in that trust, and he will never have to pay a dime of capital gains taxes on what he wants to do. Therefore, he's going to grow a whole lot faster, and then he builds his wealth based on the trust. Okay, and that's what he's going to do. If you buy real estate and you buy it and hold it and you lease it out, the rental income or the lease income that is paid, if it's paid to the trust, it's non-taxable income. So passive income, we can always get to zero. Active business, generally we can, but it's like I told somebody, said, I want to be guaranteed that I can get active business income to zero. Okay. Most of the time, it's the trustee does things that he shouldn't do. And if he takes a type of income and he might have to pay taxes on it, and he comes back, I said, I thought you said I didn't have to pay taxes. I said, you screwed up, pal. So it's, as long as you're patient and learn, it generally is zero. Okay.
You may have mentioned this earlier. I didn't get on the call right exactly on time, but do y'all offer tax services, or do you have an accounting firm that we can use that matches, the trust that we'd be setting up so that we can sort of be in sync?
Yeah. Oh yes. We have, you said the magic word for me, y'all. So where are you?
Sorry.
I'm with you, pal. I'm an old Tennessee boy, so I use that all the time. But where are you located?
In Texas.
Oh, well, we've got
near Lake Texoma.
Yeah. Where is that?
That's kind of like far north Texas on the Oklahoma-Texas border.
Well, the guy who's been doing the trust tax returns for the longest period of time, Richard Stimson, is located in Cleburne, Texas. So
I know where that is, outside of Fort Worth.
Yep, that's right.
He did our show previous to this several months.
Yeah, he is a fine man. He's a ex-military, retired field grade officer. He's just a great man. He's done my tax returns for 8 years, and his value is in structuring these things, knowing the ins and outs. Well, somebody asked me ongoing fees. There's no ongoing fees on this trust. It's just the cost of their tax return. And the tax return, I have a lady who works for me, does my books. She puts it together just the way Stimson wants it. She emails it to him. He just downloads it into his system, and he charges me $600 a year to file my 1041. So for me, the ongoing fee is the $600. Well, plus I pay Julie anyway, the lady who does my bookkeeping. So I pay her anyway for other things. But that's it. Now, if I sent all my receipts and everything to him, and he did the bookkeeping and everything else, it might be a couple $1,000. I don't know. But it's not much in any case.
Yeah, that's more than worth it.
Well, it's more than worth it for him to sign your tax return and e-file it, because guess who they come back to if there was ever an issue? Okay, come to him. and he has to stand there and he'll do it. He has to represent you. We have a couple of people in California here. I've developed a couple of people here in Orange County. There are a couple of other people that we're training, a couple of people, two groups of people in South Florida, a lady in Colorado, and we're just getting them up to speed. It's not, the 1041's easy to do. It's the putting it all together and making it work. How do things work together? But the good thing is you're going to have his advice. He's going to set you up. And if I were you guys, I'd invest in a part-time bookkeeper. Let her call Stimson. He'll send her a chart of accounts, set her up, and just keep expenses. And I keep expenses. I've always learned to do that, and I just do it. I have a wire basket, a deep wire basket, and I just throw the receipts in there, and I'm getting ready to take it to Julie, and she'll do my bookkeeping. And sometimes I still don't. It'll be still, for some reason, it'll be August before I finalize everything. Yet I'm starting right now. So there you go. Life gets away from you.
Now, let's assume you don't have a lot of precious metals, you don't have blocks in my group, and you don't have dinar. Just the average Joe out there, what is a healthy amount of assets that you would definitely want to put into a trust?
Well, see, it's tricky. You might not have. Have any of you guys ever watched the movie of the series Yellowstone?
Yes.
Okay.
Great show.
So it's great, fabulous. I wish they'd go 20 years with. So anytime they are always, they've got a massive amount of their wealthy beyond belief with the land. But from time to time, they get jammed up with cash. So if they don't, for them, put the property in the trust, so it bypasses estate tax, because if the character Costner plays kicks the bucket, they're going to come and they will rip that farmer. If they don't have the cash to pay the estate tax, and right now he's single, so it'd be 50% everything over 11 million or 12 million dollars. So they would just get ripped apart. So if you have some land, but you don't have a lot of cash wealth, it might be worth it for that. I've had people just do single purpose trusts. A couple of people here in Orange County have sold their homes or pieces of property, and the amount of capital gains they were going to pay, they bought the trust just to avoid the capital gains. So there's a lot of reasons. It doesn't have to do with a vast amount of wealth. It's just, do you want to protect the money and not have to look over your shoulder? Protect what you've got. There's a lot of factors. Now, I'm not trying to avoid it, but it's just, in this case with this guy in New York, he wants to grow his business fast, and if he doesn't have to pay capital gains, he's going to grow it twice as fast.
Right. Okay.
So that's not helping, I'm sure, but it's not an easy question to answer, quite frankly.
All right, and I've got one asking, how much does this 5-legged trust cost to set up?
We will keep. Our promise is to keep it under $1 million. Okay. Now we actually charged Andy twice as much as we normally do, just because he didn't want any favors. So, but that's an Albert question. Albert can talk to that. We have some. If you're thinking about this and you want to do it, Albert might be able. He'll help you. we'll figure something out. But I don't mean to avoid it, but that's just his business. I just get on and just talk. But he can answer that for you.
All right. Now, would you put all investments under one trust, or do you set up additional trusts?
There is a group that, you know, I know it's out there, and what they sell is a package of, I don't know, half a dozen trusts. And their theory is that every separate asset should go into a separate trust. But the problem with that is they are expecting all of those trusts to be able to be penetrated so that if the worst happens, you'd only lose one asset and you'd retain the other assets. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But in our trust, with the spendthrift provision and the fact that the law firm, so if you ever, our attorney of record, for total disclosure, is a law firm, Paul Rosen law firm, Paul Rosen. And if you look up Paul Rosen, he's a litigator. I mean, he's a, you know, personal, what do you call it? He's an ambulance chaser. He's not either, because he's really, but he's a litigator. And so why is Paul Rosen a litigator, the attorney of record for the trust? Because he was hired by the original law firm many times to prevent the trust from being penetrated when it was being sued. And so he initially lost one case because the court thought at the time that money that was distributed to a beneficiary could be attached. And the appellate court came back and said, nope, if it's from the trust and that trust you can't get the money in that trust, it still is, you can't attach it once it's distributed to a beneficiary. So the appellate court overturned it. So Paul is, as a litigator, is the attorney of record, and he's smart. So our trust cannot be penetrated. And I ask sometimes, you know, how much could you hold in the trust? And they say, well, we've got beneficial trusts that have billions of dollars of assets in them. So it's a long-winded way to say you don't need to have multiple trusts for multiple assets. Now, the only time you might have a relationship of other trusts with one is if you wanted to set up and move assets from one trust to another for children, possibly. But then you'd have to go through a little bit of a process, but it can be, you know, it can be passed on tax-free. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to do it. I mean, it costs to set up the other trust, but it's non-taxable to go from one trust to the other as long as you do it correctly. But no, put it all in one.
Unless you've got active income.
Well, okay, but with Andy, and he's not going to hold any assets at all in his business trust. All of his assets, both personal and business, are going to be held down in his private beneficial trust, all of it. And if there's any need to lease some of that back to the business trust, we'll do that. And then that lease payment is passive income flowing into his beneficial trust. So all of his assets, both business and personal, will be held in the beneficial trust. Nothing is held in the business trust because it's a pass-through only.
Richard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if the business trust is using it as a pass-through, if I have an LLC, can I not use that LLC as a pass-through to my private beneficial trust? Okay,
here's how. See, we can do things with S corps and C corps, but if like with doctors, we have to continue. If they're in a PLLC, for instance, we have to continue working with, if they could be in an S Corp. Very few of them are in C Corp. So we have to continue operating with the entities they're operating in, because they have license and they have insurance relationships that they're not going to pay to a trust. So with an LLC, for instance, we have two avenues. Okay, and if we had a choice between an LLC and a business trust, we would suggest you do a business trust, because it's going to stay off the radar as far as the IRS is concerned. The LLC could be looked at some point, but the LLC, what we would do is that you would sell any assets that the LLC held, business assets, to your beneficial trust. Then we'd do a lease back, but then you would make the beneficial trust a member of the LLC, not a general partner, a member. You'd fund a little bit of your beneficial trust, and then you're going to buy out 90% of the general partner, and then work a profit sharing plan. Okay. So income would come into the LLC. You would take your expenses out of there, which would be, your LLC expenses. It could be rent, but we're going to include that lease payment on the private trust, your beneficial trust, leasing business assets back. So you would take your income in, all expenses out. Any profits that were made in the LLC, 90% would be passed to the beneficial trust as limited partnership income, which is passive income. And then the general partner would have to take 10% of the profits on his personal tax return as the general partner. So it works out pretty well between the combination of those two things, leasebacks and the profit sharing. 90% of that income is ultimately going to flow into your beneficial trust as tax-free income, because it's passive. Did that make sense?
Yes. So if we don't need the business element of it, then all we just really need is a beneficial trust then.
Yeah. As long as your business is passive, and so currency or the stock dividends with Andy, all of that. If you're not taking commissions, now, if Andy sets this up, and Andy's taking a commission on some of the stuff that he's doing, that commission is going to have to be paid to the business trust. You can't have that paid to the beneficial trust. So, but you could run your commissions through your LLC if you wanted to. You can do either one. And you're right, you just need a beneficial trust if you're going to do it the LLC. The only reason we suggest a business trust is because it stays off the radar. That's all.
Okay.
But either way is fine. It's just fine. You can't do, if you had an S Corp, which is like an LLC, you could only do the lease back. You can't do the profit sharing with an S Corp. So that's why we prefer, if you're not going to use a business trust, use an LLC.
Well, in our case, we just turn in a EIN to Andy, and he just he gives the proceeds to us, and charge that EIN for tax purposes for us. So.
Yeah, but he would have to distribute to a beneficial trust. For the EIN, he would distribute and to the EIN for the benefit. The beneficial trust would take the passive income, because if he distributes to an LLC, you don't want that. There's no reason to do that.
No. That's not what I was talking
Yeah.
I was just saying that we turn in a W-9 to him for our proceeds.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
And the trust name and the EIN for the trust would be on that W-9. That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Then I would W-9 or I would 1099 the EIN rather than a social.
Yes. That's correct. And you can, as long as it's passive income, you can 1099 that trust all day long. It's still not going to be taxable income.
Howard,
Yes, ma'am.
hi. I live in California and I have invested in Forex. And when I was listening over the last few months, I was advised by some people that I listened to form a trust before the rate change, because once the rate changes, then you're going to be affected by the new rate. And then if you start the trust prior to the rate change, you take the value, you hold the value at the pre-value rate change. And so I rushed to start a trust, and I started a Wyoming Spendthrift Trust. Got an EIN number, started rushing through the whole thing, went to set up a bank account. They started giving me a hard time because they wanted me to go through certain steps. So I just put it aside. So I don't know, after listening to you, if that's the correct trust. I know that there's I think at least 5 or 6 sub trusts that are underneath the master trust. So is that something that I can use, or do I need to have something additional, because there's not only Forex, but there's other types of investments that I've made?
Well, here's how you have to, you kind of have to help me answer your own question. Who's the grantor of the trust and who's the trustee?
Well, I am and my son-in-law is the trustee.
You're the grantor and he's the trustee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Here's the problem with that. It gives you no control over that trust. You don't have any control. Your son-in-law does.
Well, the bank
Now,
wanted me to put myself on as one of the trustees.
you can't do that. You can, and okay, good. So now you just, if you can do that, that's a revocable trust. It's not irrevocable. In an irrevocable trust, you cannot, there's an insurance trust that's called the defective irrevocable trust for a purpose, but any kind of asset protection or any kind of tax deferral trust like ours, you cannot be the grantor and the trustee, because you've created a taxable, when you get ready to file your taxes in that one, if what you say is, I'm not challenging you that you're not, but if you tell me, if it's confirmed that you are telling me, wow, this trust is set up, it's a revocable trust and it's a taxable trust.
Right.
That's
Well, it's an irrevocable trust, but the thing is that how do I get control of it then if I'm not the trustee and I'm supposed to be designating someone else as the trustee? How do you?
Well, you have to trust your son-in-law. That's all.
That's the case with anybody, I guess, right?
Well, but in our trust, our clients that come to us, we don't advocate anybody ever be the trustee of the trust except the person who is our client. Now, Drew came to us. He's our client. Albert, though, is the grantor settler, and he's just using Albert as the grantor because he cannot be the grantor and be the trustee in this trust. If you are,
See, I'm really confused because I thought I formed the trust and I'm the person that should be the settler and that someone else should be the trustee. But what you're saying is I should find somebody else to be the settler and then I would be the trustee in order for it to be safe and I have control of it?
absolutely, yeah. Oh, I've got some horror stories. I have a client that formed a trust with us. That's a trust baby. Her mother left $200 million in the trust for the beneficiaries. The law firm is the trustee, and this lady can barely get enough money to live on. Out of a $200 million trust, you want to be the trustee, you want to be in control of your own destiny and not have anybody else. I mean, if you can send to Albert or send to me the first page of that trust and the signature pages, I'll tell you what it is. I don't need to see much more.
Okay.
I just have a feeling. Here's the first thing: if you're not the trustee, you don't have any control.
Well, this was done remotely, and so I really haven't had even the amount of advice that you're giving right now. And when I went to form the bank account, they just said, hold on. You know, we're not even get to that stage yet because the RV hasn't happened. So I don't know what their plan is.
Well, but if you have other, do you hold any real estate in California?
I do.
Is it rental income?
No.
Okay, it's your home.
Yes.
Okay. You know, I'll look into it, but just if you want to share the first page and the signature pages, I can pretty much tell you, but you don't have any control, even though you're the grantor, and that's not what we advocate. We don't want anybody to be the trustee except our client that comes to us.
Okay. Okay. I'll do that. You'll provide your information. Is that correct at the end?
Albert set this up, and I want people to go through him.
Yeah, Albert's
He'll give.
is listed.
He's what?
Albert's phone number is listed there in the chat.
Yeah, just go through Albert, and he'll get it to me, and I'll get an answer for you.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now the last question here. Is the five-legged trust the largest package you have, or do you have a trust to start with that you can grow into a five-legged trust?
No, because you have. The answer is no. I mean, the reason is all of our trusts are five-legged because they all, in some way, are irrevocable, complex, yada yada yada. So. But no, generally no, because you won't have any of the things if it's not five-legged. You don't have the necessary tools. It would probably be a revocable trust, and we just don't do that.
Okay. All right. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. We've been a little over an hour, and I appreciate your time.
Sure.
And
yeah,
we may do this again in a month or so, or especially right after.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was super informative. Appreciate that.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah, talk to Albert about. There may be ways we can help everybody. Just talk to him about it.
I'm seeing a phone number that says 949-633, but then it cuts off. It says 4. I don't know what the last digits are. The last 3 digits.
For Albert, it's 951-545-0739.
Okay, thank you.
You betcha. He just posted it again. Okay. Thank you, Roselle.
All right.
All right,
boys and girls. It's happy hour here in California, and you know. And I'm going to go partake.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely.
And I'll anybody has any questions, I'll send them to Albert, and y'all go from there.
Yeah, we'll answer them. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Anybody that wants to hang on after he's gone and has any questions about the group, I'm more than happy to stick around and answer a few questions if you have any.
All right. I'm dropping off. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much, Richard.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Are there any questions regarding Woolard Enterprise business?
I do have one question about the trust. So that's something that we can use Albert's company even if we live in a different state, right? That's not something that we need to meet in person or anything like that.
No, I just, like you said, I just got 2 trusts with them. I got the beneficial trust and a business trust.
Okay.
And I've already got my EIN numbers and everything, and they're quick because I just started this process Monday.
Wow. So it can be set up in a matter of a handful of days.
Yeah, the initial, now the guts of the trust itself can take several months.
Okay.
The initial where you can go and open your accounts, your checking accounts, savings accounts, and whatever, that's done really quick.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't even think to ask him because I'm not ready to go set up the accounts yet, but I don't know what else I need. I've got the EIN. So I think there's something else. You have to have a cover sheet. You have to have something that you have to take into the bank with you, but I don't have that yet. I'm sure it's probably going to hit tomorrow.
Okay. Now, one of the tricks that I heard from or that I learned a couple months ago is that I don't know how factual it is, but if you write a letter of exchange, I guess, stating what assets you own, and you get that notarized, that's saying that you have possession of your assets at its value pre-RV, right? So I don't know if that's a little tax loop that might help people until they get their trust set up if the RV happens. And
It's like a demand note that you're officially selling it. And I can substantiate that a little bit maybe by saying that when I initially spoke to Albert Sunday night about all this, he said that I explained to him about this business and how I'm taxed here, but I'm W-2'd. And he said that intent is very important. He said, so if you thought about this a year ago and you just didn't have the money, you hadn't planned it right, or you, for whatever reason, you couldn't do it, but you thought about it, that's the date your trust can be dated. So my trust is actually backdated to 1/1/20.
Oh, wait. So if I thought about putting together a trust a few months ago, I can backdate it to then?
Correct.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's the date of intent.
Does it really make any difference though if you're not, like, if the RV hasn't happened and you're already in pre-RV? Does it really make any difference if you, oh, this is when I thought about it as opposed to when I did it, as long as it's pre-RV?
Yeah, I've got a lot to learn here, so don't take what I tell you. Just this is what I'm thinking. For example, when we put our house in, I've got 160, 180 in equity. Now I could go ahead and deed it into the trust, but I backdated it over a year. So I think I can also create a demand note for all the payments that I made up to that point.
I see.
A demand note for all the electric bills, a demand note for everything that has to do with the home. So when I go to take money out of it after the RV, because everything I do is going to go into my beneficial. So what I take is just, it's not going to be taxable for a while because I'm going to have the trust pay me part of my demand note. And I may have that wrong, but I believe that's the way you do it. So you sell everything to the trust and you're basically getting an IOU from the trust. So as you pull out from that IOU, that's not taxable income.
It's so confusing.
It is. And I'm not 100% sure I have that right. So
Right.
don't hold me to that.
No. Well, hey, I really appreciate you putting this together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
So how do you know whether or not your trust is officially set up? Because I, mine has been done long distance, and I started going through all of these steps. I immediately got an EIN number, but now I may have to change that because of this conversation. And so how do you know, like, but I did have it notarized, or I had let's put it this way. I had the trustee information notarized, but now I have to change the trustee, it sounds. So how do you know, like, where those dates are? Or is that just a legal question that I need to ask?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know the answer to that because I'm just beginning this process, so I'm not sure.
Just out of curiosity, how many blocks are we up to?
80, just under 8,200.
8,200.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
And we're at like 1.3 billion right now. Shares.
1.37 billion, I believe.
That's incredible.
I just sent you some more, Andy, today
Okay.
after our conversation. Thank you.
Right. You bet. I'm excited, guy. Y'all hear the same things that I do as far as what's happening here, and so I'm excited with everybody else. I'm ready for this thing to come through. So
Absolutely.
My latest from somebody is that we should be looking to see it go to 1650 or 1660. Should have happened a week ago or close to a week ago. And then
1660.
Right. Yeah. And the whole purpose is to get the money off the street.
Yeah.
It's significant to them. They want they want the 3 note or the 30 dinar off the street in Iraq. And if it's almost like starving them out of it. They're going to have to cash it in. So I think there's a lot more moving parts to it than that. But from what I understand, that's the gist of it. And once they get to a point, then they're going to make a go of it. So I don't know what that point is. I don't know the timeline. I don't know anything. And of course, I'm hearing from a friend who heard it from a friend. So, you don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
Andy, did you hear that they have some new USD notes over there, or USDN or whatever?
No, I understand the small notes are printed, but
I know, but I heard they actually on the street over there have new you know how our money's always green? Well, they have some new different colored US money over there. I know you talked to your broker. Could you ask him that question?
Okay. Are they U.S. Federal Reserve notes or?
No, they're not Federal Reserve. They're U.S. Treasury dollars.
Okay. Yeah, that's the first I've heard of anything like that.
Maybe they're leaking the new money in other places.
I was on a call, a Zoom call with some of my friends in the military, and one of them had heard from somebody that's still over there that supposedly that's the case. But I'd like to get that confirmed from somebody else because it was secondhand information. And if you could talk to the broker and he'd be able to tell you directly, yeah, there is some. I'd sure like to hear that.
So they're U.S. Treasury notes.
They're U.S. the new USD, whatever it's going to be called. Apparently, what they're saying is that there's still the old U.S. currency over there, the greenbacks, of course. But now that there's some new ones that are different in color. But apparently there was some blue one or whatever, but they're U.S. They're our money.
Maybe it's a bunch of counterfeit.
I don't know, but if you could find out, because everybody knows what our money looks like, and if someone was to try to introduce some new looking money, it would stick out like a sore thumb, and I wouldn't expect to hear back through military channels about garbage like that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can ask.
Yeah, it can't hurt to ask, right?
I used to tell somebody else, why don't you just come right out and ask them? Oh, you don't do that. Well, I do. So I'll ask.
Yeah, ask if they heard anything about some new blue colored U.S. money and whatever.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And by the way, how expensive is his things?
I paid 12 for each. He initial quoted me 12.5, and then when I told him I needed both, they took 1,000 off. So I paid 24 for both. Not cheap. Not cheap.
No, because what is it, the best one that exists? And it was on your show, wasn't it, that you had those guys on?
Yeah,
And
it's
they
the same trust. It's a very identical trust, but this one is much cheaper. With that guy, and the one we had on the show is the guy he's talking about that does his taxes. But they had quoted me 30,000 for a business trust and 15,000 for a beneficial trust. So I was
Ooh.
paying 45 with them. So yeah, this guy was much better price. I don't know where they come up with their pricing, but
Are you talking, Andy, are you talking about 12,000 or 1,200?
12,000.
12,000.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, that's really expensive. Ooh.
Yeah, it's very,
I didn't near pay that with mine.
no, and
2,500.
what I'm understanding, because I've gotten quotes from a few people, and they'll quote you a price, but if you want this and this, it's extra. If you want this, it's extra. If you want this and that, it's extra. And I just ask him, can you tell me if you have these 5 elements? What is it going to take to get me to these 5 elements, which was the irrevocable, non-grantor, discretionary, spendthrift, and all that. So exactly what these guys offer. Because
Yeah, but I think the Wyoming Trust has those.
That's the Wyoming trust that I have. I have that. I got that through Trust Unlimited LLC, and they were giving an offer. They normally charge around $6,000, and I don't know if they're still making the offer. It's $2,500, and you can do it on a payment plan. So
Yeah, but you can go back through them because you haven't already done it, and you can put yourself as a trustee and let somebody else be the originator.
yes, that sounds like what
That's,
I'll probably end up doing.
yeah, that wouldn't be the irrevocable spendthrift, what they're offering. They wouldn't have the same, because once the settler is done, they're done. That's it. It can never be changed. And that's why I had put somebody to be my settler. And he said, well, is there any chance at all that they could ever become a beneficiary? I said, well, I don't see it, but it's possible. He said, if there's any chance at all, you do not want them to be the settler, because they can never be a trustee and they can never be a beneficiary. So I said, well, okay. I said, well, then I'll find somebody else. And he said, well, he said, in 5 minutes, settler's work is over. Once they sign it, they put their social to it. He said, so I'll be your settler. And he was asking me for that person's social. And that's how we got into that conversation. So I let him know that, no, it's a relative, but I don't think they'd be a beneficiary. So yeah, he said, if there's any chance, you don't want them to be the settler, because that's it. They're done. They can never have anything else to do with the trust. And their whole responsibility is about 5 minutes long.
I'm glad I listened. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Because from what he's saying, that can never be changed, or it defects from the purpose of the trust and the strength of that trust. So, all right. I do not have a projected date to stop selling or taking any more orders. I'm leaving it open until this thing pops. And when it does, as long as I've got some of my money over there, if the rate changed today, or let's say the rate changed Sunday, and somebody already had put something in the mail to me today or tomorrow, then they're in. But you're not going to send me something that's post dated Monday and expect me to give you blocks. So yes, I'm going to leave it open until there is a rate change. I want as many people to be blessed by this as possible. I don't care which group you get in, just get in one. We can do monumental change. We got the ability. There's enough money now in this that we can make a substantial change. So that's my goal. All right. Well, y'all, it's been over an hour and a half, so I'm going to cut this off. And
Thank you.
thanks everybody.
Thanks, Andy.
You're so very welcome.
Sure appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everything you do for us.
You bet. So y'all take care.
All right. God bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Andy.
You're very welcome.
Bye.